Sandra shivered as the cold, damp air of the inner-city alleyway seeped into her bones, the stench of rotting garbage and stale urine mingling with the bitter scent of her own fear. She had hoped that, moving in with her boyfriend Larry, would bring her the escape she desperately craved from her tumultuous home life, but the reality had been anything but salvation. At 17, she had thought she knew what love was, that Larry was the answer to all her prayers. A man with a gentle smile and a charming demeanor, he had promised her the world. But behind closed doors, that gentle smile turned into a snarl, and his charm was replaced by cruelty. His touch, which had once brought her butterflies and sweet whispers of affection, had become the harbinger of pain and humiliation. The apartment they shared was a cramped, run-down space in the heart of the city, the kind of place where hope went to die. The walls were paper-thin, allowing every sound from the street to invade their lives, the distant wails of sirens, the incessant chatter of drunks, and the mournful howls of stray cats fighting for survival. Yet it was within these walls that Sandra's own personal hell unfolded night after night. The door to their apartment creaked open, and Larry's heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. He was home from his shift at the nearby construction site, his boots caked with mud, and his overalls stained with the sweat of his labor. His face, once handsome, had grown hard and weathered under the burden of his own anger and frustrations. The sight of him sent a cold shiver down her spine, her heart racing as she anticipated the horrors that awaited her. Sandra had learned to be a master of concealment, her bruises cleverly hidden beneath layers of makeup and clothing that revealed as little skin as possible. She had hoped that the shadows of the alley would offer her the same protection, but Larry had a way of seeing through her facade, peeling back her layers until she was laid bare and exposed. He stumbled in, the scent of cheap whiskey on his breath, his eyes glazed over with a rage that had been festering all day. She knew the drill by now, knew that he would demand her attention, demand her love, demand her submission. It was a twisted dance that she had been forced to learn, a dance that left her soul bruised and her body aching. Without a word, Larry approached her, his gaze a mixture of hunger and disgust. His hand shot out, grabbing a fistful of her hair and yanking her head back. Sandra's eyes watered with pain as she stared up at him, trying to find a spark of the man she had once loved, but all she saw was the monster he had become. He shoved her into the tiny, cluttered living room, the force of his touch sending her crashing into a pile of dirty laundry. She tried to scramble away, her heart racing, but his heavy boots stomped down on her back, pinning her to the floor. His weight was suffocating, his breath hot and rancid as he leaned down to whisper in her ear. "You're going to give me what I want, you little slut," he growled, the words slurred by the alcohol. Sandra felt his hands on her body, ripping at her clothes, tearing at her skin. He was rough, brutal in his desire, his touch leaving her feeling violated and soiled. She bit back a scream, knowing that it would only enrage him further, and instead, she focused on the distant sound of a passing car, the flickering light of a neon sign outside the window, anything but the pain and degradation that was being inflicted upon her. With a grunt, Larry pushed her onto her stomach, his knees pressing into the soft flesh of her thighs, spreading them apart. She felt his belt buckle clank against the floor as he freed himself from the confines of his work pants. The sound was a prelude to the agony that was about to come, a reminder that she was utterly at his mercy. Sandra's mind went numb as she felt the cold, hard floor against her cheek, Larry's calloused hands gripping her hips, his fingers digging into her flesh. He was like an animal in heat, grunting and snarling as he positioned himself behind her. She could feel the tip of his erection probing at her entrance, and she squeezed her eyes shut, her body tensing in anticipation of the inevitable pain. With a violent thrust, Larry penetrated her, the sound of their bodies colliding echoing through the desolate alley. Sandra's muffled cry was lost in the cacophony of the city's nightlife, a silent scream of despair and resentment. He didn't bother with foreplay, didn't care if she was ready or willing. He took what he believed was his movements rapid and forceful, each thrust driving her further into the floor. Her body was his plaything, a tool for his own gratification. She felt him inside her, stretching her, filling her with a sensation that was no longer pleasurable, but painful and degrading. His hands moved from her hips to her breasts, squeezing and twisting her nipples until she whimpered, the pain mixing with the fear that he would snap them off with his iron grip. He leaned over her, his sweat-drenched body pressing down on her, his hot breath on her neck as he whispered vile things in her ear, calling her a whore, a slut, his favorite words to use when he was in this state. She felt the warmth of his spit as he emphasized each word, and she bit down hard on her bottom lip to keep from crying out. Her thoughts drifted to a place far away, a place where she was safe and loved. She pictured her mother's gentle smile, the way the sun felt on her face when she was a child playing in the park. It was a world that seemed so far removed from the one she was trapped in now. Larry's pace quickened, his breathing becoming more erratic. He was close to climax, and with each stroke, he pushed deeper into her, his grip on her hips tightening until she was sure he would leave bruises. She could feel his cock swell and throb inside her, and she knew that she had to endure just a little longer, that she had to take it until he was satisfied. With a final, violent thrust, Larry came inside her, his seed spilling into her unwelcoming body. He collapsed on top of her for a moment, his weight heavy and suffocating. Then, with a grunt, he rolled off and onto the floor beside her, his chest heaving with exertion. Sandra lay there, unmoving, her body trembling with the aftershocks of the assault. She didn't dare to look at him, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. Instead, she focused on her breathing, on the slow, painful process of bringing her body back under her control. As Larry zipped up his pants and stumbled to the kitchen for another drink, she took the opportunity to pull herself together. Wincing with every movement, she managed to stand and stumble to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. She looked into the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back at her, her eyes red and swollen, her makeup smeared, her clothes torn. With trembling hands, she turned on the faucet and let the water run, the sound of it a small comfort in the otherwise silent apartment. She peeled off her ruined clothes and stepped into the shower, the hot water scalding her skin. She scrubbed herself raw, trying to wash away the feel of him, trying to cleanse herself of his touch. But no matter how hard she scrubbed, she couldn't escape the feeling of being dirty, of being used. As the water turned cold, she stepped out and wrapped herself in a threadbare towel. She knew what was expected of her now. She had to play the loving girlfriend, the doting partner, until the next time he decided to take what he believed was rightfully his. The bedroom was a minefield of memories, a place where love had once bloomed, but now only held the remnants of a destroyed life. She slid into bed beside him, his snores already filling the room. Her heart was a heavy weight in her chest, each beat a painful reminder of what she had just endured. Carefully, she maneuvered herself around Larry's sprawling form, his alcohol-induced snores rattling through the darkness. The bed was a battlefield of tangled sheets and discarded clothes, a silent testament to their violent union. Sandra lay there for what felt like an eternity, her thoughts racing, her body aching. The heat from the shower had barely managed to soothe her, and she could still feel the echo of his rough hands on her skin. She stared at the stained ceiling, her eyes tracing the cracks that had become all too familiar in her hours of silent suffering. The clock on the nightstand ticked away the minutes, each one a countdown to the moment when she knew she would have to face him again. She waited until the rhythm of his breathing evened out, until she was certain he was deep in a drunken slumber. Only then did she dare to slip out of bed and tiptoe into the kitchen, her bare feet patting softly against the cold linoleum. The kettle was a beacon of hope in the otherwise oppressive room. She filled it with water and set it on the stove, her eyes never leaving Larry's sleeping form in the doorway. As the water began to heat, she gathered her courage, her thoughts turning to the plan that had been forming in the depths of her desperation. The whistle of the kettle pierced the stillness, and she quickly turned off the burner, her heart hammering in her chest. She poured the steaming water into a large metal pot, the heat almost too much for her trembling hands to bear. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. With the pot in hand, she approached the bed, her eyes narrowing with determination. Larry's snores grew louder, and she waited for the perfect moment, the moment when she knew he was at his most vulnerable. Her hand hovered over him, the pot poised to deliver the scalding liquid that would change everything. Her hand was steady, her breath shallow. This was her chance to fight back, to reclaim some semblance of control over her own life. And then, with a swiftness born of anger and pain, she threw the hot water over Larry, the scalding liquid searing his skin, his screams tearing through the night like a banshee's wail. She watched as he writhed in agony, his body contorting, his skin bubbling and peeling. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air, a testament to the power she now wielded. She felt a twisted sense of satisfaction as she watched him suffer, his cries of pain a sweet symphony to her ears. The monster that had tormented her for so long was finally getting a taste of his own medicine. Larry's flailing arms knocked over a lamp, sending it crashing to the floor. The room plunged into darkness. Sandra didn't move, didn't flinch. She waited, her body taut with anticipation as his cries grew weaker, his struggles less frantic. When the room was finally silent, she knew she had done what she had to. She had taken her revenge, and she had taken it with a fiery passion that matched the rage that had burned within her for so long. She stepped over his lifeless body and made her way to the door, her eyes gleaming with a newfound sense of freedom. The city outside was alive with the sounds of the night, but Sandra felt more alive than she had in years. The cold air caressed her skin, and she breathed it in deeply, feeling it cleanse her soul. She had survived the worst that life had to offer, and she had come out the other side. As she disappeared into the night, the alleyways swallowed her whole, but she wasn't running anymore. She was walking, head held high, her steps filled with purpose. The girl who had once been broken was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth. And as she left the shadows of her past behind, she vowed never to let another man dictate her fate.